Hello and welcome back to my sofa. We're going to do our third installment of Softly Spoken Ghost Stories. Okay, so before we get into the ghost story, I'm just going to tell you about it's not a ghost story. It's more like an unpleasant, not even unpleasant, it's just a slightly upsetting instance. Okay, so I was at an open air market, like a farmer's market, with a friend, and it was summer and we were feeling very extra. So we did full makeup, lots of hair, we did we dress up. It was a little pin-up. So I have this great Betsy Johnson dress. It has screws all over it. I've got a petticoat underneath it. I've even got a parasol, and it has squid tentacles on it. So yeah, I'm a little over the top, especially since we're from a pretty conservative area. So everybody else is just in jeans and t-shirts. So I wander into this booth, and this woman is selling steampunk jewelry. And I spot right away this octopus necklace that has gears on it, which is ticking a few of my boxes. So I'm handling it. I know I'm not going to buy it because it's very expensive, and I wasn't really looking to make any big purchases that day. But I'm admiring the craftsmanship that went into it. And while I'm doing this, the woman comes up behind me and she says, "Are you finally going to buy that necklace this time?" Which I think is a little odd thing to say to somebody walking into your booth. So I kind of half chuckle at her, and then I look at her and she looks a little perplexed at me looking perplexed, and I tell her, "I have not been in your booth yet today. This is our first pass at this farmer's market." And she looks very confused and she said, "Well, someone who looks exactly like you was just in my booth looking at that exact same necklace." So I don't know if she was having deja vu or what. But you can you can be assured that I spent the rest of that day looking for this person that like looked exactly like me, I guess, but I never found the person. So my friend sort of joshed at me like, "Oh, it must be your doppelganger," which always makes me a little uncomfortable because a doppelganger is an evil spirit, that's trying to take on your persona so that they can replace you, which means that they have to murder you or make you disappear. I don't know. I don't know what their plan is, but doppelgangers are not good. You do not want a doppelganger hanging around you. So I was a little unsettled after that. Okay, so that's a very short, mildly uncomfortable story, but let's go ahead and get to our spooky story of today. Okay, this spooky story oh no, it didn't personally happen to me, but it happened to my best friend when we were in middle school. And she, told me about it as it was sort of happening, so I felt like I went on this ride with her, step by step. So we're both in middle school. Our families are very close. She is my closest friend and also my closest neighbor, and we grew up in the country. She lived in a farmhouse that was about a mile down the road from my house, and both of our houses were over 100 years old. My house was a big box, and her house was more of like, it was more like a bungalow style, I guess. The upstairs had lots of gabled areas of the roof, so each room upstairs had a sort of unique, interesting shape. People often said that it was haunted. Like, it was just sort of known in the community as a haunted sort of house. And people had stories about living there. There was some sketchy renters that were there before my friend and her family moved in. I think there was a tragedy in the house in the 70s. I think it had to do with domestic violence, but I actually don't have the full story on that. That might just be town rumors. But anyway, it was slightly spooky, and when I stayed there, I often felt unsettled. So, they had a few ghost stories here and there, but this one was definitely different from all of those stories. Okay, so so it started that her younger brother had a kind of a a surprise incident, and so their family came over and had dinner with us, and we were having homemade pizza, and then they prompted her brother to tell us, what had happened. And so he said that he was sleeping. He was kind of a nervous sleeper, so he would always have his drapes open when he slept, and he was the closest room to the farm light. So there was enough like farm light in his room, so it was like a nightlight. It just had a whole orange cast over the whole room. So he can pretty much see everywhere in his room. He woke up in the middle of the night and he didn't know why. And so he was laying in bed and decided, do I get up and go to the bathroom? Do I get up and get a drink? Do I just lay here and try to go back to sleep? And while he's deciding, he starts to hear some shuffling, movement, sort of things unsettling themselves in his closet. And, immediately, he's a kid, so he gets pretty upset and scared, but he doesn't move. He just kind of sits there in his covers. And then suddenly, his door of his closet pushes open, right? And out of his door steps this tall figure, like wearing light-colored clothing you can see in the farm light, and the hair of the figure was very dark and kind of tossed around over their face and kind of fell in a messy way over their shoulders. And this figure moves right past him and just goes right for the door and out the door and doesn't even acknowledge that he's there. And so he realizes that this is not a ghost. It was his mom. Like, his mom in her flannel pajamas with her bed head was in his closet, and then came out of his closet and went to the hallway and scared the crap out of him. And he was very confused at the time, but didn't think too much about it until that morning when he told his parents. He was like, hey, Mom was in the closet and came out and scared me. Like, she had been sleepwalking, right? But just sleepwalking in like the most creepy, spooky way possible. So it was kind of a joke, and they had a good laugh about it. And they, told us over pizza, and we had a good laugh about it. We're like, yikes, like everybody in my family has experiences with sleepwalking. But that was just like a whole level of creepy, disturbing your family sleepwalking, right? So then, later that month, I think, not very much time had passed, but then the same sort of sleepwalking thing happened to my friend. So my friend shares a closet with her brother. It's this funky situation where it's like, I think maybe kind of an attic closet. So the closet itself is sort of triangle in shape. And there's a door in her brother's room when you open it, and that part of the closet is his. But if you keep walking down this hallway-shaped closet, in the middle are like winter coats and formal clothes. And then when you get to the other end, there's another door that goes into her room. And that's where her clothes are. So she likes to have all of her drapes very drawn. Like, she can't sleep with any light in her room at all. And so she said that she was woken up by her room filling with light. And she looked, and her door was open, and she realized that her brother's door was open, and just enough light kind of came down that long hallway right into her face while she's laying in bed, just enough to kind of disturb her. So she's very annoyed. She didn't realize she left her door open. She's thinking about if she should just try to go back to sleep or if she should get up and shut her door. And while she's thinking about this, she sort of catches some movement in that attic-looking closet. Now, underneath all the clothes are these plastic tubs full of toys, right? And sitting on the edge of one of the plastic tubs is this figure of this person wearing, light clothing, and their hair is sort of pushed up around their face, and the hair that's sort of falling in front of them as they're tilting forward is just sort of swaying back and forth in this yellow farm light. And so she could see that the person was sort of barely moving back and forth. And she realized this is her mom sleepwalking again. And for some reason, her mom wants to go into the closet when she's sleepwalking. And it's just very creepy and spooky. And so she just kind of decides that she doesn't want to disturb her mom. And she's a little eked out by the whole situation. And so she pulls the covers over her head and she goes back to sleep. And then sort of tells everybody about it in the morning. So apparently, like, maybe her mom is really stressed out about something, but they have a couple more, like, her mom's sleepwalking incidences that happen. Okay, so fast forward. Her mother, and her younger brother and her dad are all going to go stay in the city, like, a ways away, with her mom's sister in her condo. And then at the last minute, it turned out that her dad had to work. And so he was going to have to stay home that weekend, which I'm sure he was not upset about at all because he probably would rather stay at home and have the whole house to himself. So he's at home and he watches some movies and orders in pizza, probably from Casey's. That's always a running theme in my stories because that's the only place in town that you could get pizza. So he's watching movies and then he decides, okay, I'm going to go to bed. So he goes to bed and then at night he is woken up in the middle of the night. And he thinks like, okay, well, I woke up. Should I get up? Should I, go to the bathroom or should I just try to go back to sleep? And he's thinking and laying in bed and he hears some normal shuffling sounds in the hallway and he's like, oh, that's probably why I'm awake. My wife got up to go to the bathroom and she's woken me up and now she's coming back to bed. So he looks at the door and sure enough, here comes his wife through the door looking very sleepy, and his wife just goes over to her side of the bed, pulls the covers open, slides in, and just lies right down facing the wall away from him. And he kind of turns and he looks at the back of her head and, starts to maybe fall back asleep. But then he realizes, he said it sort of washed over him like waves, like, I am home alone. My wife and children are not in this house. Like, who is in my bed? He said he lifted out of the bed in just sheer panic and threw himself on the floor and scurried over to the wall and turned the light on and looked back at that bed, and there is nobody in that bed. Like, this person is gone. And so they were talking about this final chapter in this saga of his wife sleepwalking spookily at dinner with my parents, and my parents were like, well, maybe your wife was never sleepwalking at all, and maybe this was a doppelganger spirit and she, was feeling things out and then was waiting until your wife was gone to make her final move. And it obviously didn't go as planned for her because she must have given up, because they said after that night they never had that problem again. So okay, so I hope that you found this story a little spooky. I think we'll do some more in this series until I run out of scary stories. I guess if I run out of scary stories, if somebody wants to send me a scary story then I can awkwardly butcher it like I do when I tell my stories. I guess we could play that game. I don't know. Whatever happens. But I've got a few more to tell you. All right, until next time. Bye.